Hi Year 11. Today we're going to be looking at the information that is given with artworks in exams. I just want to make sure that everybody understands what they're looking at and they understand the significance of that information that they're provided. So this is what your exams will look like. Year 11, Year 12, they all have the same format. We have a Section 1 and a Section 2. We're not going to worry about Section 2 yet. This first part of the unit is just about Section 1. For each question in Section 1, you generally have 3 questions worth different amounts. First question is worth 5 marks. We're going to look at the 5-mark question first. So this is the question for the 2007 exam, and the question says, the Blackstone Punjabi weavers are a group of Aboriginal women from 23 Indigenous communities in Western Australia. Identify the main characteristics of their art-making practice as represented in the images below. Now, going back to what we talked about yesterday, we know that identify is our signpost word, and then we would have the main characteristics and their art-making practice as the 2 layers that we need to discuss. So again, our signpost word is identify, and our first layer is main characteristics, and then art-making practice. But we're not going to look at that today. We're not going to answer that question today. All I want to do is make sure that you guys know how important it is to look at this stuff here. So, the images below, as it says in the question, are the different plates. So we briefly touched on this yesterday. The plates are just what they call the different artworks. They call it plate 1 and plate 2 because it's easier to reference the word plate in the question rather than list the actual artwork. So this is the artist, or the artists, the Blackstone Punjabi weavers. It was made in Australia, and this is the title, Punjabi Grass Toyota, made in 2005. Grass, raffia, and a discarded car frame are obviously the materials. Sometimes it will give you size, sometimes it will give you the birth, place, and date of the artist. The point of this information is to give you different puzzle pieces to put together that you can write about in your response. The other plate here, this is the artist, because the artist always comes first. This is the specific artist who we can assume is part of the weaving group. The title, always in italics, is called Basket, made in 2005. It is made out of grass and raffia and 30 centimeters in diameter. And then it's given you a little bit more information on the group. Benson is a leading member of the group. She specializes in coiled basketry technique. So, why is this stuff important? Why do we need to know what it was made out of, when it was made, where it was made, and who it was made by? The question, specifically, this one, asks you to identify the main characteristics of their art-making practice. We can tell straight away that their art-making practice, the how of their art-making practice, is weaving. It's even given you some more specifics, coiled basketry technique, which you probably wouldn't have known just from looking at that. We might have just assumed it was weaving. So it's really important that you read this information. It can give you so many clues to talk about in your artwork, in your art response, sorry. Let's go to the next one. Explain how Jeffrey Smart and Glenn Mercat have responded to the world around them in these artworks. So just looking at what we were talking about before, explain is our signpost word, how the 2 artists have responded to the world around them in these artworks. So we know we need to talk about the artists, that's our first layer, possibly talking about their artist practice, have responded to the world around them in these artworks. That could be the conceptual framework. It could be the why of their artist practice. It's up to you. Now let's take a look at the information. Jeffrey Smart, they've given you the birthday, 1921. So we know that he is, if he's still alive today, I'm not sure, he'd be like 90 years old. He was born in Australia, living in Italy. This one's called Morning Yarragon Sliding. It was made between 1982 to 1984. Straight away, that date of when it was made gives you some context at what we're looking at. This is not a super contemporary work. So when you're talking about the world around them, we're not talking about the world that we are in, we're talking about the world that the work was created. We know that it is oil on canvas and that it is 100 by 134 centimeters. So it's like a meter by a meter and a bit. So it's a significant work. It's not large, but it's not tiny. So the world around the artist can just be given to you from the information. We know that he was living in Italy, but he was born in Australia. So he's an Australian, he's living in Italy. It's the morning. It was made in the 80s. What was happening in the 80s? That's what we need to think about. Why oil on canvas? What are the associations we can get from an artist that uses oil on canvas as opposed to acrylic on linen or acrylic on cardboard? What is oil on canvas to the world? Then they've even given you a little bit more information. Smart painted this picture from a photograph he took of a railway station while travelling in country Victoria. A siding, well, not sliding, siding is a section of a track off a main railway line. It is used for loading, unloading, and storing trains. So we know now that this has something to do with railway. It looks fairly industrial. It's not very upper class. It looks more like working class. And we know that in 1980 Australia, there was a big working class. We are a working class country still, and in the 80s even more so. So we are getting little clues that tell us about the world, every little thing we read. Okay, let's go to the next one. Glenn Murcutt, he's an architect. So that's an interesting piece of information. Born in 1936, a little bit after Smart, but still, he's still pretty old now. He'd be in his 80s. In Australia, Magny House, made between 1982 to 4, so the exact same time. Bingy Point, New South Wales. It's made out of corrugated iron, steel, glass, and brick. This house was commissioned by the Magny family to be built on the location of their favourite coastal camping site. So, without even looking at the artwork, because a piece of architecture is still an artwork, especially in this context, if we're talking about the artist's world, the clues that we can get just from this information is that this guy, he's an architect. So the fact that he has built a house is significant because that is how he expresses himself. That's his how in his artist practice. That's how he makes his work, through architecture. We know where it is. It's in New South Wales. We know that it's made out of corrugated iron, steel, glass, and brick. So fairly simple materials, and that it is built on the site of their favourite coastal camping site. So it's significant to that artist. Why would he choose to build a house on that site? Because it has personal connections to him and his family. We can learn all that from not even looking at this. There are other things that we can learn from looking at this, like maybe the curve of the roof is mirroring the tent, and there are other things like the simplistic nature of the building references tent and camping and the lifestyle that you might have when you're camping. Okay, so again, artist, where they were born, where they're living, the title, the date, the materials, the size, they can all give you so many clues to help you answer the question. All right, last one. Using the postmodern frame, analyze how Arne Zian and Barbara Kruger have revised and challenged traditional art-making conventions. In your answer, refer to plates 5 to 8. So we've got 5, 6, plate 7, and plate 8. So you need to reference all of these in your answer. But let's not worry about the question. Let's just look at the information. So this is the artist, born 1960, so they're probably about 60 years old now. Born in China, but he lives and works in Australia and China. Why is that significant? Because it tells you about his current world, where he is, what he's inspired by, but also his heritage. This plate 5 is called China China, bust number 10, and it was made in 1998. This porcelain sculpture was cast from a human figure, and the decoration was applied by ceramic workers in China. The Chinese vase is from the Qing, or however you say that, dynasty, 1662 to 1722. So in comparison to this one, which was made in 1998, this one is almost an antique or ancient relic. It's glazed porcelain with cobalt blue decoration, 33 centimeters high. So the reason I think that they've given you these two is because the question is talking about how they've challenged traditional art making conventions. So obviously this is the traditional piece here, and how they're wanting you to say how this artist has gone against the traditions exhibited in this kind of work. You could answer that question just by using this information. The fact that he has used a human figure to cast a shape rather than making a traditional vessel. It was applied by ceramic workers in China. Is that traditional or contemporary? That's up for you. And even the title, China China, bust number 10, the fact that this implies that there's more than one and then it's not a kind of priceless antique is also going against the traditional conventions of this sort of piece. So you can get all that information just from reading these words here. Okay, last one. Barbara Kruger, born in 1945 in USA. It's called Untitled, I Shop Therefore I Am, made in 1987. Photographic silk screen on vinyl, and it is 305 by 305 centimeters, so huge. It's like 3 meters by 3 meters. This is Barbara Kruger's artwork printed on shopping bags. So, going against tradition, just the fact that it is not oil on canvas says a lot about how it is going against tradition, the use of text here, but just from the information, the fact that it has no title, but then it does have a title, that's very unconventional. And that it is used to be printed on shopping bags, and that it is not considered a priceless object like the high art, like all the Renaissance paintings that we saw at the Art Gallery of New South Wales. That goes against traditional conventions. So, the whole point of this video was to make you understand how important this sort of information that you get given with your artworks are to help you answer your questions. I'm going to put a quiz up now that's going to make you dissect lots of information and read it really carefully. And good luck, and I hope to speak to you and see you soon. Okay, bye.